very much, Simon. Good morning, everybody. My name's Keynote. I'm chairing today. We actually have post-it notes, and we'd like you to write any questions that you may have brought with you today, or any questions that you think of. Write them down on a post-it note, and you'll see there are pieces of paper stuck up on the wall in here. Post those questions up there, and then we'll sift through them throughout the day and place them in front of the expert panel that we have at the end of the day. Right, just got a little opening comment to make here. It is gratifying to see so many people turn out today, especially as we're all going to be doing something very un-English. We'll talk about money. I think sex and religion are okay now, and we'll chat about that, but we're English, we don't really do money. So it's good, because part of the reason why we have such a problem with the financial system is because we don't talk about money. And I'm very passionate about talking about money, and especially when it's linked to ethical values. For over 20 years, just specialising in ethical investment, I run an ethical research company that sort of lifts up the carpet and sees what's underneath for the corporate sector. And over too many years, I decided to set up a vegan pension fund in Australia a couple of years ago. Great idea at the time, it's Australian. I'm also really proud to be chair of the Ecumenical Council for Corporate Responsibility, which is one of those organisations which, I can say this as chair, shouldn't really exist, but we exist to encourage the churches to invest ethically. And explaining to lay people that there is actually an organisation that needs to exist to try and get churches to invest ethically does raise a few eyebrows. And in all my roles, I see the reality of the machinations of our financial system. I see the damage and exploitation that is done with money every single day, and how in complete ignorance we are making our lives worse by allowing the money system to continue the way it does. Earlier this year I embarked on a mini lecture tour, 11 cities in 17 days in Australia, and just talking about the principles of money. And one of the things I used to try and get people to think was to relate it to them as individuals and how they lead their lives. And I focused on a particular part of the body. We've all got at least one of them, these parts. And I find from experience that people from the faith community, people within campaign groups, and people that are active on society, environmental, human rights issues, tend to use this piece of the body quite a lot. Anybody want to guess what it is? That. Basically, that is whipped, I'm just doing it myself, that is whipped out on a regular basis. You shouldn't, you should change, you should all do what I do. And I think part of the problem is that we externalise the issues and make it someone else's responsibility because we as individuals feel that we have made a change in ourselves. And yet most of the people that use this haven't sorted out their own finances. And if you don't sort your own finances out and take responsibility for what your money does, then you are part of the system, you're part of the problem. And I wrote a blog recently that was entitled, "We Get the Bankers We All Deserve." So if we've deposited money in a mainstream bank and haven't added any constraints, caveats or restrictions on the bankers, I think it's a bit churlish to criticise them for doing what they do when we didn't tell them not to. We handed the money over and said, don't care what you do with it, don't care where you invest it, just give me my interest. And the same goes for the stock market. So, today is about trying to think about ways of making change, to think about how you use that, and next time you do whip it out, make sure that your own house is in order first. So, on that note, I'd like to introduce Sarah Pennells. Now, Sarah runs a personal finance website for women called savvywomen.co.uk, which she founded in 2009. Prior to that, Sarah Works as a freelance personal finance journalist, including reporting for the BBC Saturday Breakfast programme, as well as writing for websites and magazines. Sarah's written 3 books, including a guide to green and ethical saving and investing. And if you haven't read it yet, I suggest you do read it because it does give that excellent broad overview of the world of finance and from an ethical perspective. So, Sarah, over to you.
Thanks very much, Lee. I went freelance. One of the first things I did was take out a pension. And I kind of knew how to judge a pension company as to whether it would be a reasonable company, whether its charges would be kind of okay. But I was a bit stuck about how to choose an ethical one, and I wanted to do something that wasn't just putting my money into any old fund and not having any idea of where it was invested. So I was talking to a financial advisor who I used to use for editorial comments and who I kind of rated. And I was saying, kind of what's out there at the moment. And I remember he said, do you want to invest ethically? And I was like, well yeah, I would like to actually. He said, all of your pension money? Well, bearing in mind I was starting, so we were probably talking about £200 a month at that point. It kind of seemed like an odd question. But I set up a pension fund. And I have to confess I didn't really put a huge amount of thought in it because I didn't really know what to look for and I didn't know where to start. So that was my kind of introduction into the world of green and ethical money. And then a few years later I was writing a book for a publisher, and it was part of a series that they were doing on different subjects, and they came back to me and said, would you like to write a book on ethical money, or if not, can you recommend somebody who does? And I kind of thought, well, actually I would like to, because I had in the meantime been writing about green and ethical money, sort of fairly short articles, and it was something that really interested me, but I felt like I hadn't really got my head around what it was, and I really felt it was quite difficult to start if you were interested in the idea of doing something different with your money, but you didn't know the terminology. It was actually quite hard to dip your toe in. So that was my starting point. One of the things that's really interesting about what's been happening over the last few months is the increase in interest in doing something different with your savings. I remember sort of when the credit crunch sort of started kicking off and thinking there was going to be this big backlash against the banks. And in some ways there was, but it was also so scary that there was an idea that we don't like the banks, but we're kind of too scared to take too much change because nobody knew what was around the corner. And then, obligingly, the banks provided all these helpful headlines about LIBOR rate rigging and, mis-selling of interest rate protection products. And suddenly, there was a real reason to do something different with your money. And I know that Move Your Money is here today, and they've certainly seen a huge amount of interest in people moving money from the mainstream banks to ethical or alternative providers. And I was talking to banks like Co-op, Triodos, Charity Bank, Ecology Building Society, and they all said that over the last few months they've seen a massive increase in both interest in terms of people coming onto their website and also people turning that into action and taking out accounts, whether it's savings accounts or current accounts.